Get ready, because it's the TacoTuesday.com podcast.
What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the TacoTuesday.com podcast. Today in studio, we have Jared Hart, member of CE5. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, guys.
So, a good place to start would be, could you tell us a little bit about what CE5 is and what you guys do?
Yeah, so CE5 is more of a concept than it is an organization. And it's basically human-initiated extraterrestrial contact, where we go to... through the consciousness field, through meditation, we can connect with other intelligences, and through that protocol, call them to come visit. Basically, is the whole premise of the idea. So, so I got introduced to it just through a documentary. There's a documentary called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which is produced by Stephen Greer. You guys have probably seen it or heard of it. He teaches the protocol. And, you know, when I first came across that documentary, I had been kind of going down the UFO rabbit hole. This all happened around the time frame of when COVID started. And, you know, I had actually seen a couple of, my very first UFO sighting happened when I was 19 years old. So I grew up in Utah. I grew up in a Mormon family. So I went on my Mormon mission to South Korea. I was on my mission in South Korea one day, riding a bus just out in the countryside with my mission companion. We look out the window, and there's a black triangle just silently floating there, just in the sky. We watched it for over 10 minutes until we drove out of sight, and it was gone. But, you know, at the time, I didn't really... I mean, here I am, a Mormon missionary, preaching the gospel, right? And UFOs were the furthest thing from my mind, so I was just like, whoa, what was that? Chalked it up for something from... Because you see a lot of military stuff over there with all the U.S., you know, there's jets all the time flying around, so I was just like, well, that's something interesting. But... yeah. You know, I banked that in my memory, and then after the 2017, you know, articles and things from the New York Times with these videos coming out, I was like, wait a minute, so these things are real, and that's when it triggered back to me, like, I think that's what I saw, you know. And then COVID happens, and I'm going down the rabbit hole, and I come across Stephen Greer's video, and you know, I was really taken back by the concept, and I was really, you know, interested in it. So, you know, I watched the documentary. I was watching a lot of these other, you know, productions about UFOs and the cover up and all these things that had happened over the years. And anyway, so I'm going to pick up my kid one day at the park. And as I'm driving over there, I noticed there's these lights in this. It was kind of a cloudy night, but there's these lights in the clouds. The clouds were glowing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's interesting. So I keep driving, and they just stay there, you know. And so by the time I park and I go over to the park, I'm like, I'm gonna go see what this is, you know. So I walked over there and I pull out my phone, I start videotaping it, and the thought occurred to me while I'm videotaping it. I'm like, I'm going to try this CE5 protocol, you know, and see if these things can actually, you know, connect with us. And so I did this little quiet meditation, you know, spent a couple seconds, and then I said in my brain, if to the beings, or to the craft, that's what I called them, if you can, if that's you guys, if you guys are up there, then I want you to blink your lights and show me a sign or something like that.
Right.
The very moment that I had that thought finished, all of those lights blinked in unison, and then flew up into a triangular pattern and blinked at me. And the thing that I can't really help anybody else understand, but when I had that thought and it responded, there was like some sort of link happened. It's like I felt like, I don't know, it was weird, but like when you think something and it responds to you, it's just like you're almost controlling it, you know. And it was really interesting. But yeah, that experience, you know, really opened my eyes to like, oh my gosh, this actually is a real phenomenon. Yeah. I had already believed UFOs were real because I'd seen them before, but you know, to actually have this experience where I'm like, test this theory and to have it work in myself, you know, just to experience it myself was
felt like validating.
So validating. Yeah. It was unbelievable. So that's kind of what got me into the concept of, you know, once I was, you know, saw the information, tested it myself, that's what got me like, I need to start a CE5 group, you know, because there's an app where you can kind of like supposedly meet with people, but it hasn't really worked very well. So I was like, I'm just going to go on to Meetup and create a CE5 group. And so I did that. Nice. And we've been running it. I've been running the group for almost about a year and a half now. We do monthly CE5 meetups here in Rancho Santa Margarita, South Orange County, first Saturday of every month. And we have anywhere between a half dozen to 24 people show up to the meditations. And we've had some pretty interesting experiences doing that as well.
Nice. What was like the most profound? I guess What was like the most profound experience you've had doing that?
So yeah, that actually, the most profound one actually happened just about 3 months ago, and there was only 4 of us that showed up that night. It was a pretty small group, but we were doing the CE5, and towards the very end, we usually go about 2 hours. We play the meditation, the guided meditation, and then we'll meditate, and then we'll usually have like some quiet time where we'll just stargaze, and it was towards the end of the group meeting, and there was probably only 15 minutes left before we were wrapping up. And the woman sitting in front of me, because we face each other in a circle so we can kind of like view the periphery, everybody together. And the lady in front of me says, "Is there a street over there?" And she's pointing behind me, and it's not. It's completely wilderness. And we look back, and she's like, "It looks like there's car lights shining on that cloud." And so we look back, and sure enough, there's like this glowing mist, right? Now there's no cars down there. There's a river, there's trees, but it's part of the Oso Trail that goes down out to Dana Point. But in any case, so we see this illuminated like cloud that like appears and moves. It's like an illuminated mist, and it kind of shifts back and forth, and it's the size of about what you would think a UFO would look like, and it's kind of in an oval shape like this, and it's going back and forth, and then it goes like this, and it disappears, and then it reappears over here. It does the same thing.
And were you guys all watching this at the same time?
Yeah, we were all watching this. We were all watching this, and this happens probably 3 or 4 times over the course of 2 minutes, where we see this thing, and it kind of just, and I can't tell it. I can't say what it was. It looked like some sort of a mist that was like a glowing cloud that just all of a sudden appeared, and then it shrunk back down, and then it would appear. And it did it, like I said, a few times over the course of like 2 minutes, and then. But yeah, we all saw that. That was probably the most amazing one that I experienced personally because of the proximity. I've never had something that close to me. This was only 100 yards away from us. So.
Are you having like consistent interactions or experiences like when the groups do meet up and things like that? And what is it about kind of that? Is it just because, so for people that don't know Orange County, Rancho Santa Margarita, that area you're talking about, it is wilderness. You get away from the light pollution, things like that. Is that the reason that you guys are doing it there?
It's just it's happenstance. And that's just because it's where I live. And it was a convenient
that works
place,
too. Yeah,
a
short
convenient
commute.
place to set it up. And to be honest with you, the golf course where we have it at, I would go out there oftentimes at night. I ride an electric skateboard, and if you go out on the golf course at nighttime, it's like you're on you're snowboarding.
Yeah.
Because it's just grass, and you can carve up and down it and ride your skateboard. And I would go out there, and I had several UFO sightings just out on that golf course at the nighttime. So one was where I thought it was a satellite. Satellites move consistently like this. All of a sudden, this satellite goes boom, 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 and then goes and shoots off the other direction. Like satellites don't zigzag, reverse direction, and shoot off.
No, it's consistently in one direction.
Right. So there's this pattern that I've started to see them, and it's been consistent. Like I see UFOs in the group as well as outside of the group. I've probably seen. I kind of stopped counting at one point. It's probably over 24. I would estimate, of very bizarre aerial phenomenon that I classify as a UFO. And I've had other CE5 experiences too, just personally with that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of interviews given to like former Navy and Air Force pilots that would just go on patrols, right? They would be on aircraft carriers, and they'd oftentimes be in the middle of the ocean, right? And they would just be patrolling whatever their, aircraft carrier, and they would see things that would move in patterns and at Mach speeds that no craft that the military had, could ever replicate.
Right.
And it's happened quite a few times. I've seen these guys talking about it. And they didn't necessarily say it was one thing or the other, but I have seen some guys, like even in these Senate hearings that have been going on recently, that they're talking about. Like I think they even specifically said that it could not have been made on Earth.
Right.
And like the fact that doesn't sort of stop everybody in their tracks when the U.S. government is sort of admitting that we have things that are not made by humans that are flying, and it's not a bird.
Right.
It's pretty incredible, and it's super overlooked. And, I've seen some of these other interviews too of people that I'm a little more skeptical of some of them, but I do think some of them may have some merit where they talk about working in places, sort of like Area 51 or where like any sort of life that we would have on Earth that is not human or like extraterrestrial life will communicate telepathically and not verbally. God, I wish I remembered the dude's name, but he was asked, are you communicating with them? And he said, well, that's tricky. There's verbal communication like we're talking, and then there's a different kind of communication.
Lou Elizondo.
What?
Lou Elizondo.
Lou Elizondo?
Lou Elizondo.
Yeah.
By the way, we should mention that we have another guest for this podcast today because somebody is a big, big fan of the topic. So you'll hear questions coming in.
From an unfamiliar voice. Yeah. So did you get any of your, like to think, to meditate? How did you come up with that idea? Like where did that come from?
Well, so initially, when I'd seen those lights, I had just recently watched the documentary that talks about CE5, which talks about the protocol of doing the meditation. So
okay.
I just followed Stephen Greer's protocol, and to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot extra you have to do. Just I go to YouTube, turn on his CE5 meditation, and then hit play, and we put on the Bluetooth speaker and we do the meditation. But I think one of the keys of the success of the protocol is having like this open heart coherence, which means that people have to come there with like a pure heart, pure intentions, because it's through the energetic fields and things like this that these connections are being made with these other beings. So yeah, it was basically just following the protocol, and then the time that I had that first CE5 experience, it was just me basically remembering, hey, I'm going to try that thing out. It was fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Is that when you're talking about the energy field, are you referring to the Akashic records? And then second, do you feel like when you tap into that field or the Akashic records, that's what they're wanting to do, is to create a link and an openness with you? Is that what they're trying to do with humans?
Well, that's a good question. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what it's called, but I do know that there's something that connects every being in the universe, the substrate that we are all connected to through the consciousness field. And because of that, telepathic communication is a real thing. And I've actually experienced it in other settings with like psychedelics and stuff, but the way that I had that experience where that craft connected with my brain, even if it was just for a few seconds, when I was videotaping, and I was kind of stumbling over my words a little bit because I couldn't quite articulate what it was, but the thing was like responding to my thought, and I was trying to say, oh, it's telling me, it's talking to me. It was like we were having this link of communication, because every time I had a thought of like, oh my God, it would like blink in response to my awe or whatever. It was really bizarre.
Yeah.
Have you had people come out to, again, when you kind of host these get-togethers and things like that, have you had people come out that come out from religious backgrounds? And then also, like, and if you have, like, what's their experience with something like this?
That's an interesting question, because me coming from a very religious background,
yeah,
I grew up Mormon, and was really dedicated to the religion for most of my life until just around the time that COVID hit was when I left the church. But I've invited people from that community to join, and nobody's really expressed. I think that it kind of like it goes in opposition a lot of times with that kind of belief system. So as far as religious people coming out, I think most of the people that come out are very open-minded. A lot of them are seeking, they've seen the CE5, they're looking for a group, they've watched the documentary, they're on board, and so they're usually very open-minded, kind of, I guess, type of folks.
They're open to it already.
Yeah, they're open to it already.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Have you ever had a problem where people show up as like a skeptic, or anybody that just like gives people a hard time trying to?
No, not really. Actually, I think for the most part, everybody that's come and showed up has been pretty decent.
Yeah.
Nice.
What are the goals for the group, for the community?
Well, for me, it's just kind of the overall mission of kind of like of establishing this, I guess, contact with these star beings, peaceful contact. That's kind of what the whole protocol of what Stephen Greer is trying to do is we need to go to them in order for us to have a relationship with them. I think there's so many people who are like, oh, the government. That's not. I don't think that's where it's going to happen. I think the government wants to block this at all costs, because I think that that it's detrimental to them.
Well, so how many institutions would crumble if that were to be like tangibly proven?
Right,
That
right.
we have beings that are not from this planet
I
on
can
this
think of
planet.
one big city in Rome,
know?
but
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But I mean, yeah, we're talking education, religious institute. There's things that would have a really hard time with that being a fact.
Right.
Bed Bath & Beyond would probably still survive. They can survive most.
You know, I don't think Bed Bath and Beyond is terribly worried.
That's what they're coming for, man. The coupons.
And tacos.
Is there any sort of like hope to get as far as like communicating through just God? How do I word this without sounding like a moron? Is there any sort of goal to have like a verbal, like in English, in an understandable way, communication?
You know, that's a good question because,
Or are you more just trying to let them know that you're open to it?
you know, well, I don't think it's about verbal communication. I think that the actual CE5 protocol is much more about tapping into that consciousness field, having that open heart and inviting, peaceful energies and beings, to come. And so, for me at least, my initial CE5 experience triggered something in my life. I looking back, I can kind of trace what happened, but, it shifted some things for me in my conscious awareness of kind of what I am and what we all are. It kind of like expanded my consciousness. And that, as a result, shifted my experience with psychedelics. And it was really strange because I had, I'd probably say about 4 years ago, I got into psychedelics as I was processing my faith transition, leaving the church, going through a divorce. Excuse me. And so in any case, I was very interested in magic mushrooms and wanted to see kind of what these things were all about. I'd experimented with them as a kid, but I hadn't touched anything like that for a long time as I was living the Mormon life. And in any case, I got into psychedelics about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was very familiar with these strains have this type of an effect. I was these types of visuals come from golden teachers versus these type come from B+ or whatever. So I was really into mycology and knowing the mushrooms. I was growing them, making, doing that myself. And in any case, so these mushroom, the actual process, of what I'm experiencing shifted after that CE5. And it was like a completely different world. I have that CE5 experience. And after that point, I take my mushrooms and I'm expecting something to happen one way because I'm all used to it, and it's like I'm going to a completely different level. I'm like, this is interesting. So I started to actually encounter beings in those experiences after, post CE5 connection. Now I'm starting to see beings appear to me. I'm having portals open up. I've had my grandparents visit me, really bizarre stuff that I can't really quantify. And I don't know really how to get anybody to kind of validate what I'm experiencing because nobody else that I know has had this type of a shift happen to them. And so, even to the point of where it's like sometimes, if you're familiar with the Star Wars movie when Princess Leia, she records herself in R2-D2 and that little holographic projection comes out and it's like, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope, right?
Yeah. Great analogy, by the way.
Well, I'm seeing things like this actually pop up when I do these psychedelics, and it's interesting because there's a consistent pattern. It's about 2 hours into it. I feel like the shift in my consciousness. It's like a little knob turns, and then all of a sudden I'm interfacing with this other dimension, and there's beings there. There's they'll come and they'll telepathically communicate with me. Sometimes they'll puppet my body, or they'll ask permission if they can see what it's like to move a meat suit. And they'll plug in through my foot. It's the same place every time. I get a really bad Charlie horse, bottom of my foot, and then all of a sudden, I got something going like this with my hand, and I'm not doing anything. And I'm wild watching it. I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? And so even to the point of I kind of feel like whoever was in those spaceships and connected with me that day, they have some sort of message that they've wanted to trigger into me over the course of these psychedelic journeys where. It's like a movie plays. One chapter will play and it will show me a little thing about a past life. And then another movie will play and it'll show me something about what I'm here on this earth to work on. And so it's like almost like there's this unfolding of a story to me, and most recently, and this is kind of where it gets kind of strange, so bear with me, but most recently I had one of these experiences where, you know, the R2D2 type projector pops up, and this happens in four different instances on the same night. And I see, so remember, I grew up Mormon, you know, that I have a lot of trauma that I worked through with that religion and processing all that. But so I'm doing the psychedelic journey, and all of a sudden I see this projector pop up, and it's him, but the prophet of the Mormon Church, Russell M. Nelson, and he's standing there at a pulpit, and there's people that are like interviewing. It's like a press conference or something, and somebody asks him a question, and he gets really irritated, and he makes this hissing noise. He goes like this, and then the second he does that hissing noise, he flips his form out of a human form into a dragon, into a reptilian, and he shifts his form into a reptilian, and I'm like, okay. What do I do with that? I saw that projector happen to me 4 different times, and
The same thing.
Exact same scene. You know, and so for me, it's like if you dive down that UFO rabbit hole, pretty much every hole takes you to the same place, where there's this group of malevolent beings that have been on planet Earth and have manipulated humankind, and you know. A lot of people, you've heard the term lizard people or reptilians, you know, a lot of people say that they are a real thing, you know, so I'm persuaded, you know, based off of what I've experienced and, you know, kind of connecting all the dots. You know, I ask people this question. I say, listen, if you think it's that outlandish, let me ask you, there's on every single culture throughout planet Earth, whether it's Asia or Europe or Africa or South America, all these ancient cultures have the same mythical creatures, which are dragons, right?
Yep.
These dragons.
I've wondered about this.
These dragons, there's lore of these dragons all over the planet. The Chinese zodiac, there's 13 animals in the Chinese zodiac. All of them are real animals except for one, the dragon, right? So my question is it possible that there could have been these beings that are quote unquote historically called dragons that changed their tactic and they went dark 500 some odd years ago? Who knows? I mean, when did the stories of dragons stop, right? And now here we are facing a situation where we're not getting any transparency with the UFO, and we're going through the government, and it's just stonewall after stonewall. Congress can't get through any information. All we can get is whistleblowers testifying.
Well, that tracks.
And even then, they're only sort of like half-assed.
Right, and then they got to go into a skiff if they want to talk anything detailed, right? So, you know, I'm persuaded that I think that there is some malevolent forces that are at the top of the food chain that are very discreet and pulling the cords, and you know that's what it looks like to me. You know, I think the evidence is there sufficient to kind of support this hypothesis. Whether you want to believe that that's just some corrupt individuals at Lockheed Martin, or if you think that there's something else, you know, pulling the strings on the planet. But
I think it's funny you say Lockheed Martin's. Yeah.
I was gonna say shots fired. Yeah.
Well, I mean, those would be the guys that would want to keep something like that quiet because they're the main, you know, weapons manufacturers. These are the guys that make wars happen.
Right.
I've seen videos of they are just called UFOs, right? It's always like in limited context. They don't really give you much information, but it'll be like during nuclear testing, and it was primarily in like the 60s and 70s.
Right.
No real like nuclear testing is going on right now, but they would. In multiple instances, you would see a beam of light come out and go towards the missile, and then the missile, as well as the warhead, would be completely like disengaged, and you would see the missile, the propellant, just fall, and then no explosion, no nothing.
Right.
And the theory was that was aliens trying to say, you know, you guys are going too far with this nuclear stuff. Like conventional is fine, but this is really going to separate the planet.
Well, I think there's 2 different classifications of aliens, and you got to look at there's the good guys and the bad guys. And I believe the ones that would have shot that warhead down would have been the good guys. And I believe they're a galactic federation, and they are overseeing planet Earth's conscious awakening. They're kind of overseeing the whole process of this disclosure.
It's like a policing force almost.
They are a galactic policing force, and they are basically combating the reptilians. The reptilians have planet Earth as well as 22 other star systems where they've got these, they call them prison planets, where they basically put a planetary population in prison in the consciousness field. They put them, they build situations where they'll control a planetary population through religions, through debt systems, through monetary debt systems and things like that.
make you believe in something
Are
like
you saying
money,
that
which
they're
is
responsible
nothing?
for student loans? Because I have a bone to pick with them if so.
But yeah, I mean, if you can keep people always enslaved in debt and always living hand to mouth, that keeps them in their lower three energy chakras. Because there's 7 energy chakras in our body. The lower 3 are the survival ones, and that's where the malevolent, quote unquote, reptilians want humans to be at. Because when we're in those lower chakras, we're vibrating at an energy that's beneficial to them, and they supposedly are harvesting us as we're basically they're a human farm where they harvest our.
It's almost like watching a zoo.
Our negative energy, right? When
you said there were 22 different like policing star systems, I can't remember exactly.
Right.
Where does that info come? Like
so yeah, there's a lot of people that are contactees that have actually had face-to-face interactions with extraterrestrials. Alex Collier is a great resource. He's one that talks a lot about the reptilians. And he was basically contacted by 2 Palladian beings when he was like 8 years old back in the 1960s, and he's had continual contact with them. He'll sometimes go into their starship, things like that. But it's through
physically.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Can you describe the Pleiadian? So just for the audience.
So my understanding is, and I may have. Was it Palladians and Andromedans? I can't remember 100%. But in answer to your question, the Palladians are. I think they're oftentimes referred to as like the tall whites,
Yeah.
Or the Nordics. They look like the group that would be, Scandinavian.
Right.
So they're a supposed a race as well. There's literally, from my understanding, no limit to the amount of different races of extraterrestrials that are out there.
I mean, it's a mathematical impossibility, is all I've ever heard, that there would be anything other than infinite beings scattered throughout. I mean, if the universe is really expanding at the speed of light in every direction, there's no way our tiny little Robin.
The universe is conscious, so everything within the universe there's consciousness spread throughout the entire universe, and so the universe exists for us to have a playground. Basically, it's a place where consciousness comes to experience these illusions of separation, when in reality we all are one.
Yeah. You were talking about that sort of seeming outlandish to some people, and obviously there's going to be major skeptics to something like this, because without tangible evidence or proof, it does just sound kind of like nonsense, right? People want to have like the real evidence there. Damn it, where was I going with that? So, just bear with me. This happens all the time. My ADD brain just...
Well, while you're thinking about it, can I say something about the Galactic Federation? We've had 2 major defense ministers, one from France, one from Canada, come out and say that this Galactic Federation is real. 2 major countries have acknowledged this. The United States is yet to do it, but Canada and France. So there's a lot of substantial evidence.
Add Israel to that list as well.
Yeah.
Hayami Shed, the Space Force director of Israel, came out and did say the exact same thing, that there's a Galactic Federation.
So there's three countries for the Galactic Federation, and that the humans are too cruel. So
That tracks. Yeah.
We're not invited to be part of it yet. So maybe they're trying to enhance our consciousness to let us join the Federation.
It is the technological advancement of a planet is limited by the spiritual advancement of that planet. You can't develop past your spiritual enlightenment. So that's why quantum hasn't really quite come to planet Earth yet. Is because we're still operating very much in a kind of a Newtonian type, like a lower
capacity. Yeah. Well, my original point when I was saying that is like talking about the field of consciousness. It might sound outlandish, but I just read yesterday that the Voyager 1 satellite is now 15.4 billion miles away from Earth, and they were able to just turn on the instruments on board, and now it's conducting science experiments and whatever, 15.4 billion miles away. I mean, this is well like out of the influence of the sun. Like it's so far beyond our solar system now that it's just not even impacted by the sun's gravity. I feel like if things like that can happen, and like that one dude a year or two ago landed a satellite on a meteor that was going, however many millions of miles an hour, and not sending back data.
Right.
I don't know. I guess maybe there's some sort of correlation. Like if we're able to get data from something that's 15.4 billion miles away, right, that was made in the 70s, is it really that far-fetched to think that there's a like consciousness field that can be tapped into? I would say it's probably more likely that we just don't know how as a whole to do something like that, but I certainly would never say anything as far as that can't be possible. Right. The world's a crazy place.
Yeah, and imagine what we'll be able to do in 100 years. Look at what we were doing 100 years ago. I mean, this.
Well, right, every decade, every century, you're looking back and seeing what everybody did wrong collectively, and I can't believe we did that. Now we have a new way forward. Yada yada.
Yeah.
What do you think? I guess a better question would be: do you think that we are close to having like a confirmed contact?
Yes, absolutely. No,
Like-
I feel it myself. Just like the vibration on the planet seems like there's a lot more energetically people becoming awakened to really what's happening. There's a lot more sightings. I follow the subject quite a bit on social media, and I'm seeing lots of compelling, videos that have just been posted over the last, 30 days, pretty much the post-election.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of pickup of activity, it seems, and I think that the next couple of years we're gonna see a lot of big revelations come out about the subject, and even possibly, I think, we're gonna see an open disclosure event possibly within the next couple of years.
That's kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah,
Do you think it'll be an
I
open?
I've heard people, and I've heard people talk about, including somebody like John Ramirez, who's a former CIA operative and is a contactee. He was contacted by aliens from a young age as well, and he's talked to other people within the CIA that are also in that same boat. People that have been contacted from a young age and sometimes end up in those types of positions and stuff. So. But he's talked about there being some sort of a 10-year plan, that when we look back at 2017, they released those first videos, and that was the time clock of them saying, okay, here we're going to do a 10-year rollout. So 2017 to 2027, I've heard, is kind of the targeted date. People that, if you followed somebody like Bashar, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a channeler. A guy named Daryl Inca channels an extraterrestrial being called Bashar, and supposedly, according to Bashar and his people, they're saying 2026, 2027, there's going to be some sort of major, contact event. So,
God, can you even imagine? And I feel like even if and when something like that were to happen, there's too many people that would absolutely not be open to that. It would be called so many different things. I mean, people could see it as the apocalypse. People could see it as any sort of like end of the world predictions.
Right.
I'd be curious to see, how us as a collective species, right?
Have you seen us on Black Friday? We don't do well.
But that's what I'm talking about. Little things really throw us out of whack. So
this Bashar, he's actually addressed that. And he says that one of the things that they would do here, and hypothetically, is their spaceships would appear over our oceans, a couple 20 miles offshore or something, and they would just park there and sit there. That way, they're not on top of you; they're off in the distance.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get like an Independence Day, right? Like,
no, because I have no interest.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a presence here on the planet. It's like, I think that I don't maybe it won't be a big huge thing like that either. Maybe it'll just be this continual slow trickle of people seeing them.
I think it would have to be more of that. I mean, because even if you had an alien on camera on Fox News and CNN, like standing like this with the alien, people would be like, that's AI,
right? That's
not real. This is a hoax, whatever. I mean, and then we just go back to whatever kind of bullshit we were worried about 8 minutes prior to that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, God, I hope that I get to live long enough to see something like that happen.
Well, McDonald's already said the McRib is coming back, so.
And if the McRib is coming
soon,
back,
like that means, I'm just saying, you timed that thing up. They release that when stuff gets weird, so.
Crawford's in the know and shit that I just could never know.
At the time of this recording, who knows?
Yeah. No, but that is interesting. I mean, have you noticed like more and more people show up as it goes on, or is it sort of just like a fluctuating?
No, it's actually been picking up. I think more people are becoming aware of the protocol. A lot of people that come out to the groups too it's very interesting. I'm a big believer in this term of what's something called a starseed, which I believe is people that have been sent to the planet with a specific purpose to do something in relation to what we're going through right now, which is, I believe, a planetary awakening. And a lot of these people that are coming to these C5 groups, a lot of them are channels, or they're people that have kind of identified as psychic or have some precognitive sort of like capacity. And that's been something that's been interesting. Is the like one of the guys that comes out, he's very adept at remote viewing, and he's been able to disconnect his consciousness from his body and go up to places like the moon,
like astral projection.
Astral projection, exactly. And that's something that the CIA's even studied. The whole project, I forget the name of it, but the CIA had a program where they were studying remote viewing, and they were utilizing remote viewers to do espionage, to do spy on the Russians and things like that.
Of course, we'd use some cool skill set like that for combat.
Right.
Yeah.
So the phenomenon is definitely real. There is this all consciousness is connected, and like what you were asking earlier, is that the Akashic record? I think there is, like I said, that there's. Stephen Greer says it really eloquently. He says that there's a quantum hologram of everything that exists, and it's downloaded into each of us. And so you're able to tap into everything that could possibly exist because you're a part of everything that could possibly exist, right? And so because of that, we're able to telepathically access. That's how psychics are able to do things like this. Remote viewers are able to do things. How we're able to do these CE5 protocols is because in the consciousness field, when it's focused and when it's done with intention and deliberately, amazing things can happen.
Yeah.
If people wanted to learn more about your group or other groups that may be out there, or even just start a dialogue or something like that to kind of get resources, where can people do that at?
So, our group, we have a page on Meetup. If you go to meetup.com, I believe just search CE5 Orange County is the name of the group, and that's where you can join the group, and it has all the information as far as when we meet, times, etc.
Right on.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did have one more question circling back to psychedelics, because you said that it seemed, the way you made it sound as though it seems like you're able to tap into this sort of more easily. Like, would you say that the psychedelics are able to, I guess, I gotta dumb that down. What is the benefit of psychedelics versus nothing? Well, are you just more in touch?
To me, I think our brains are receivers, and I think that when you mix a psychedelic in with that receiver, you kind of change the station, and you're now perceiving other aspects of reality, or other dimensional realities potentially. And so, for me, psychedelics have been very important in a lot of my growth and a lot of my awakening. And they continue to be something that has helped me a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've been seeing a lot about psychedelics. It's whether, some people say they're harmful. Most people seem to see benefits towards it for as many.
I'm really happy I bought those Dr. Seuss paintings. Because those are dope.
So he's got the McRib and his Dr. Seuss, so Crawford's good. But I would like to, be one of the people in the generation that gets to see evidence of extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, thanks for coming on to talk about it, dude. It's a fascinating conversation.
It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. It's been fun.
So, all right, guys, got to wrap it up. Happy Taco Tuesday. Cheers.
Thanks.